Hello and welcome to Language Learning Made Easy. In today's lecture, I'm going to teach you The Voice of the Rain by Walt Whitman, which is a beautiful poem covered in class 11th English core syllabus by CBSE. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the title first. The Voice of the Rain. Now understand, can rain have a voice? We only are used to listening to the pitter-patter sound of the rain, of the soft falling shower from the heavens. But do we ever say that it has a voice of its own? So we have to understand that when we are saying that the rain has a voice, we are trying to attribute rain with human qualities. Okay? So what are we doing? We are using personification in the title, and by personification I mean you are attributing or you are endowing or you are conferring human traits or human qualities to something which is inanimate in nature, something which is inanimate in nature, something which is non-living in nature. Okay, so this is called personification. The title itself is personified. Now let's understand more about the title as well as the poem, but before that let's understand about the poet. We must know what the poet was like, what his ideology was like, how he used to write in those times, and what is the style in which he writes for us to understand the poem better. So Walt Whitman, or Walter Whitman is the name of the poet. He was an American poet, essayist and journalist, and he was among the most influential poets of his time. Why was he so influential? Because of the kind of writings he produced, because of the kind of ideology that reflected in his works, and that made him much apart from what he used to see around, okay, from the commonplace. So he is often referred to as the father of free verse. Why do we call him the father of free verse? Because most of his writings, most of his poems were written in free verse. Okay, so he would know how to toy around with the idea of verses. He would know how to create magic even without having any metrical pattern to his writing. Okay, so free verses which are written without any meter to them, without using any rhyming scheme to them. Still they are able to do their magic well, right? So he is referred to as the father of free verse. He was born on 31st May 1819 in New York, United States, and he passed away on 26th March 1892 in New Jersey, US. Now, one of the most influential works of this poet are Leaves of Grass, Songs of Myself, O Captain, My Captain. These are the most prominent works of this poet. You can explore more about them, but as of now, I don't think you need to get into more details. You can just get a cursory idea about what the poet used to write and how his writing used to influence people, what was the major theme around which he used to write, and what were his major works. This is it about the poet. Moving further about the poem, let's understand what the poem is all about. The title, as I've already told you, uses personification, and it's written in a conversation style, right? It's written in the form of a dialogue between the poet and the rain, and you'll get to know more about it when we'll start with reading of the poem. And who art thou, said I to the soft falling shower. Who art thou? When you read these words, you get familiarized with archaic English, with old English, with English that was in use at that point of time, right? When Walt Whitman was writing. Nowadays, English as a language has evolved itself because it has started absorbing words from every other language, right? So you don't get to read these kind of words more often. Now let's understand and break these words into their meaning. Who art thou? That means who are you? Who is asking this question? It is the poet who is asking this question from the soft falling shower. That means it is asking this question from the rain itself. Understand and remember that it's a conversational poem. It's a dialogue between the poet and the rain. Okay, so the poet is imagining this conversation with the soft falling shower, or bleak drizzle, or bleak rain. Which, strange to tell, gave me an answer as here translated. Now, since it's an imaginary piece of writing wherein this dialogue is happening, wherein this conversation is taking place, so you have to understand that the poet is expected to receive a response from the rain. And what is the response that it gets in return? I am the poem of earth. It's the poem, the rain says that I am like the poem of earth. What is a poem? You need to understand that now. Now, if you go back to William Wordsworth and his understanding of what poetry is all about, then it's a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. It's a spontaneous overflow of repressed emotions, right? So when you are putting them down and they are coming to you like catharsis, when you're purging all those emotions which you've been caging inside your heart for a very long time, that is what he used to refer to as poetry. Now, what is poem in layman terms, okay, in common man terms? The poetry is a piece of writing in which you're putting certain words in a beautiful order, right, and you are adding meter and rhyme to it to make it sound more meaningful, right? This is what poem refers to. Then why is it that rain calls itself like the poem of earth? It calls itself poem because it is equally beautiful in nature, it is equally rhythmic in nature. Now you just have to visualize all these things, you just have to imagine all these things happening before you. Whenever raindrops fall from the heavens, or whenever it rains, the sound that it creates, okay, the pitter patter raindrops, that sound that is created, it's like a musical sound, okay? And that musical sound is being compared with the music and with the rhyme that is created by poem. That is why the rain is referring to itself as the poem of earth. It's like this, it's like earth is purging out its emotion, it's like earth is releasing its pent up emotions, and when it cries down to its glory, when it's shedding tears, when it's catharsis of the emotions that it has been holding on to itself for a very long time, it seems as if rain is coming down like the poem of earth. All right, so this is the response that the rain gives to the poet. Eternal I rise, impalpable out of the land and the bottomless sea. Eternal. Now what is the meaning of eternal? Eternal is something that is everlasting or permanent. That means rain doesn't die at all. Eternal I rise, impalpable out of the land and bottomless sea. Now if you are familiar with the concept of water cycle, you would know what I'm talking about. You would know what the poet is trying to tell you. Eternal I rise means it never dies, okay? The origin of water cycle is from the bottomless sea and land, right? What is happening here is, you have to understand what happens in a water cycle. When sun rays fall on the surface of water, when the sun rays fall on the surface of water body, it tends to evaporate. It tends to evaporate the water in the form of steam, okay? And it gets evaporated in the form of steam, and that particular water which has been evaporated collects itself in the form of water droplets, and then it gathers itself in the form of a big cloud, okay? And when the cloud becomes too big to contain that water, it falls down in the form of rain. So this is the process of water cycle. So what happens is that the water which originated, or the water which was steamed out, which was evaporated from the bottomless sea, comes back to its own origin. So it's a cyclical process, right? The point of origin and the point of culmination are the same, okay? So from the point from where it originates, from where it evaporates, and from the point from where it goes up to the heaven, it comes back to the same point. So this cycle never stops, and that is why we call the process of water cycle, we call the process of rain, and that is why we call rain as eternal, because it doesn't die. It continues to be, it continues to form itself over and over. Upward to heaven whence, that means from where, vaguely formed. Do you think you can easily identify the shape, or the shape that the tiny droplets have taken form into? Can you do that? You cannot. Steam doesn't take any shape, okay? It evaporates itself in a very different, in a vague form. You cannot identify the shape properly, and that is why it forms, those tiny droplets form themselves in a very vague fashion up there. Altogether changed and yet the same. I descend to lave the draughts. Now when it comes down in the form of downpour, when it comes down in the form of rainfall, it laves the drought. That means it quenches the thirst of draughts. Draughts means land which is parched, land which is absolutely devoid of water, which is parched, which is dry, which has been craving for water. So it laves the droughts, mean it washes away, it bathes, or it quenches the thirst of all those infertile land that have been craving for water. Atomies, dust layers of the globe. So everything seems to become spick and span. Everything seems to be getting washed away. Everything seems to be getting clear of all the filth and dirt and dust that has accumulated over the period of time over it. Okay, so this is what it does when it comes down in the form of rain. And all that in them without me were seeds only, latent, unborn. So the poet is trying to let you know through the rain that it's so important, it's so significant that we tend to we must understand how important it is. You know, in these lines the rain itself is letting you know how significant or how pivotal its importance is, because without rain nothing can come back to life. Without rain nothing can bring itself back to life. Nothing can sprout into liveliness. And how can we say so? Can you imagine a seed growing into a plant, or any life coming into being without water? We cannot imagine that. So water is a crucial source, right? And rain provides water to us, and when it comes down in the form of rainfall, then it is replenishing the soul of earth. Okay, it is giving back life to its own origin. It's as if it's injecting life into a lifeless object, or it's injecting life into something which has been very lifeless and inanimate all this while. So the poet wants us to understand that rain is so pivotal, it's so important, it's so significant for each one of us. It is not just quenching the thirst of parched lands, it is also helping us in bringing life into its being by sprouting those seeds which remain hidden beneath the soil into plants. Okay, seeds would have remained seeds had there been no water. If you are not watering the seeds, it will never grow into plant. It will never bloom itself into a plant. It will never sprout itself into life. So latent here means hidden, inconspicuous. Seeds would have remained seeds if you would not have exposed them to water, light and sunlight, right? Water, air and sunlight. It would have remained unborn only, and there would have been no plants, there would have been no generation of life. So that is why rain is so important for all of us. And forever, by day and night, I give back life to my own origin. So rain may be good for some people, rain may be bad for some people, but all in all, it's only giving in nature. Okay, why is it giving? It is giving back life to its own origin. This is the place from where it originates, and this is the place where it comes back to. And how beautifully it is, it's just giving away whatever it is receiving from the earth is for us to note. All right, and make pure and beautify it. It's not just beautifying the surface of the earth, it's also purifying it. It's also replenishing it. It's also making it complete and pure and full in nature. Now this is where the poem ends, children. You got to understand that the last two lines have been written in brackets. And what do those lines say? For song issuing from its birthplace, after fulfillment, wandering, wrecked or unwrecked, duly with love returns. For song issuing from its birthplace. Now we have to understand that it's like an implied comparison that we are drawing between the song that has been written, the poem that has been written by the poet, and the rain which is falling from the heavens. What is the comparison? Can you think of any comparison here? Can you think of any similarity here? We have to understand it from the perspective of the poet. The poet says that whenever a poet writes a poem, or whenever he is completing a piece of writing, it is giving a sense of fulfillment to himself. He has purged his emotions, he has vented out his repressed emotions, and he has let you know what he has been feeling inside of him. Okay, so his job is done. Now how is it received at the receiver's end is not his business at all, right? It is not for him to think about. So his job was to create this beautiful poetry. His job was to purge his emotions. His job was to bring out the beauty of his thoughts into words. Now how will it be perceived by the audience is not for him to consider. His love seems to be complete and fulfilled in the form of writing. He has achieved satisfaction in the form of writing. Now, whether it receives the same sort of warmth and love and compassion from its audience is something that we don't have to think about. His job is done. Similarly, the rain also is perceived in both ways, okay? It is also perceived in both ways by people around. It comes down, it pours down, it had the beautiful intention or the motive of bringing light, happiness and contentment to all forms of life. How will it be perceived by people? It is on them to decide, okay, whether it will be perceived as something that is beautifying all forms of nature, or will it be perceived as something that is devastating, that is creating ruckus, that is making so much of a hassle for everyone, is for them to perceive. So it's all upon your ideology, it's all upon your perspective. We have to understand whether these things are wrecked or unwrecked, changed or unchanged, whether they are taken in the right earnest or they aren't taken in the right earnest, whether they are cared for or not cared for. They will come back to their origin point. They will come back to their point of origin. The song, after receiving its views from, or after receiving the love, warmth, hatred, whatever it has to from its audience, will come back to the point it had originated. And what is that point of origin? The poet's heart, right? And the rain will also come back to its point of origin. It will not be bothered by what it received at the hands of people around. So this is where the voice of the rain beautifully ends. This is the glossary. I've already explained it to you while I explained the poem to you. Who art thou means who are you. Eternal means something which is permanent in nature, which is everlasting. Impalpable is something which you cannot touch by your hands, but you can always feel. Rain is one such example. Wrecked or unwrecked means cared for or uncared for. Doesn't matter to the rain or the song. Now there are certain poetic devices which have been beautifully incorporated in this poem, which you must know and learn about. Personification. As I've already told you, when you are endowing human attributes to something which is non-living, that is called personification. For example, I am the poem of the earth. Here, what are you doing? You're using I for rain, okay? And whenever we are attributing it with human qualities, then we are using personification. So here, rain has been personified. Metaphor. I am the poem of earth. This cannot be imagined directly, okay? So it's like an indirect comparison that is happening. It's like an implied comparison between the poem as well as the rain. So rain calls itself the poem of earth. It's like the earth is releasing or venting out its emotions. It's coming down in all its glory. It's letting you know how beautiful it feels from inside. It's like catharsis of its repressed emotions, okay? So that is why this implied comparison is metaphorical in nature. We have used metaphor in this line. Poem of earth. Hyperbole. Now many people call it hyperbole or hyperbole. You would have heard it, but this is hyperbole. Please be clear with the pronunciation of this poetic device. Hyperbole. Now what is it? It's an exaggerated statement. When you are elaborating too much, when you are trying to say things which blow out of proportion, then that is what you refer to as hyperbole. So, bottomless sea. We are talking about sea which is bottomless. It does not have a bottom to it. It does not have any, it's infinite in nature. It's something that you cannot gauge the depth of. This is exaggeration, so it's hyperbole. Imagery. What is imagery? It's like a visual treat that you are getting. You have to imagine everything that has been described to you in the poem visually. Okay, so when you say soft falling shower, you just have to visualize all this thing. Okay, this is how the rain must be falling down so softly, so beautifully, so caressingly from the heavens. So we have used imagery over here. Alright, so this is the end of the poem, children. I hope it made sense to you. If you have any questions after going through this particular video, then you can post them in the comment section or you can DM me for the same. Thank you so much. Have a good day.